Coming in at number 5, we've got ASMODEUS. A lot of folks take great issue with some of those classic vices. You know the ones: sex, rock and roll, all plenty of fun, all the bane of Puritans and teetotalers across the globe. If you delve too deeply into any of the above, you could find yourself receiving plenty of disapproving looks. Too bad, considering how much folks tend to enjoy these things. Is it possible to have too much of a good thing? Hard to say, especially these days. Who knows when the good won't be available anymore. However, traditionally folks have looked down upon those consumed by lust, whether it be carnal, money-focused, or otherwise. Thankfully, you can blame a demon for all those urges. Isn't life funny that way? Who made up morality anyways? Why not just explain it all away by saying it's totally out of your control? Beautiful, it makes up for everything. So we've got ASMODEUS, the supposed son of Adam, once an angel of harlotry. Of course, his angelic properties aren't really around anymore, as he fell from heaven and now lives as a demon in the underworld. With time, he became more well known for stuff like gambling and lust, and somehow became Lilith's husband, which is fun. The two of them, both labeled temptresses, produced all sorts of demonic babies to keep the fires of hell hot. There's also the famous story of ASMODEUS killing 7 husbands in a row to keep one woman from consummating her marriage. Like, every time she got married, ASMODEUS would show up and murk her husband before they could do the deed. But then she'd go out and get married again. At some point you think she'd learn and see a pattern and stop feeding her suitors to a demon, but hey, maybe she liked the demonic attention. ASMODEUS is pretty wicked looking too. Rocking 3 hideous heads, this demon gets around by riding a dragon. This isn't his only look though, as he can appear as a few other forms to appeal to different types of people. I mentioned gambling before, and anyone with that kind of habit can thank ASMODEUS for it. Gotta love it. Lastly, his powers do tend to get stronger in November, so once Halloween wraps up, be on the lookout. Lust might not stick around as easily once everyone puts away their sexy costumes, but hey. Coming at number 4, we've got ABESETHEBU. Rocking with another fallen angel here, we've got ABESETHEBU. A little tougher to say and spell, but just as scary and powerful. Raunchy as all hell too. See, ABESETHEBU left heaven at the same time as the devil himself and didn't take the fall that well. He used to be a flatterer of God, but once he took that trip to the down below, things got ugly. If you're familiar with the most legendary gaming villain of all time, you'll see some inspiration here. While falling, ABESETHEBU was used as a life raft of sorts by other fallen angels. They grabbed at his body and managed to take hold of one of his wings. This led to the feathered appendage being torn off, leaving our poor demon to be with only one wing. Eventually it did sort of grow back, but not as it was. ABESETHEBU is known for having a red, grotesque wing. That's how many recognize this demon. Badass, but probably really upsetting to deal with after many lifetimes of perfect angelic wings. Like I said, once he made it to hell, things went extra south. He rules over Tartarus, which is essentially hell jail. All of the worst reside here, suffering eternal torment in a cage of their own creation. How lovely. ABESETHEBU also has quite the command of sorcery, able to cast powerful spells and persuade influential figures to act in unholy ways. For these reasons and more, it was decided that this demon could no longer have sway over humanity. ABESETHEBU was eventually trapped in a pillar of air, meant to be trapped for eternity. Tough break for sure. However, many do believe that ABESETHEBU will return one day and bring with him thousands of years of fury after being trapped so long. His red wing will unfurl and he will return to his vengeful and cruel ways. Who's excited? Coming in at number 3, we've got Legion. One person can be many things, but in this case, one demon is actually many demons. And these demons were so nasty, so evil, that Jesus himself had to exorcise them. Holy smokes, right? Legion is quite popular in the pop culture pantheon, and many famous exorcisms and related events seem to use him as the prime example. With so many demons dwelling within one main demonic form, they can take over the souls of people relatively easily and with varied results. However, all of the demons that make up Legion act as a sort of hive mind. They all have the same knowledge, thoughts, and reactions to things, and if one demon from the collective experiences something, they're all aware of it. With all of that knowledge and the ability to spread out all over the place, Legion can be a terrifying adversary. And even though Jesus does manage to send Legion back to hell in the Bible, there isn't much guaranteeing that many parts of Legion can't come back. Most folks only experience Legion as individual parts too. This is when the demon is at its weakest, as each individual piece of the whole only holds so much power. Were Legion to assemble all of the many together, we could be in trouble. Imagine all the limbs. Coming in at number 2, we've got Vetus. Corruption. Such a classic human form of folly. We work so hard to avoid it and even do our best to prop up those who remain pure of heart and purpose, but corruption spreads pretty much no matter what. We can thank Vetus for that. Second in command to Lucifer himself, this is the demon who wants to tempt holy people away from their chosen path. Even the most pious has a chance of being drawn in by this demon. He works very hard at figuring out people's deepest desires and then encouraging them to pervert everything they believe in to achieve said goals. Oftentimes these desires are less than socially acceptable, and at worst they can be quite taboo. Does Vetus care that he's ruining lives? Probably not. He takes on different forms to be extra convincing and makes sure to really sweeten the deal whenever he can. However, there is a way you can tell if Vetus is trying to tempt you. He only speaks in rhyme. Interesting, right? Hold on, there's a form of communication that almost exclusively communicates in rhyme and tells people to act in all sorts of wild and depraved ways. Music! Pop music specifically, but hey. Do you think that Vetus is communicating with modern folks through the tunes we so often hear on the radio, telling us to consume, to cavort, to consummate? That's insidious. And finally at number 1, we've got Beelzebub. Speaking of music, how many songs explicitly reference Beelzebub? I can think of 2 right now, Bohemian Rhapsody and Beelzebub. I'm sure there are plenty more, but you can drop those in the comments. As you do that, I'll continue on my way talking about this demon. Beelzebub, the Lord of the Flies, the devil, but also maybe not the devil. There's so much to say about this particular demon and so little time in which to do it. I'll see what I can do with what we've got today. So the Lord of the Flies may be associated with literature read in schools these days, but back before we had a tale of British boys losing their minds on an island, that association with insects was filthy. Ruling over flies meant you had domain over demonic excrement and rot. Not a good thing, right? Throughout history, people have blamed Beelzebub for all sorts of things. He was closely associated with the Salem witch trials and cited often when folks were put to death. Plus, years after that was called off, he was again referenced in many exorcisms, both infamous and unknown. All of this pales in comparison to his actual standing in hell though, where he is known as the Prince of Demons, and rules over the other basement dwellers with an iron fist. His ultimate goal is to destroy the world, and it seems as though he's been planning this for ages. Tricking people into worshipping false idols, commanding other infernal beings, and sowing seeds of discontent. Nobody's doing it quite like Beelzebub. I'd recommend learning a song wicked enough to defeat the devil, otherwise you're probably ending up going down to hell with him.
Number 5, Nephilim. This one I can get behind for sure. How the pyramids were built still baffles me, and reading all about these things at least makes my brain relax for a second. The giants, the talls, the long neck people, the Nephilim. Again, never been a Bible guy myself, so no judgment if you say all this happened, but I'm just catching up on all this stuff. But in short, the Nephilim were like the offspring of angels and human women, according to Genesis 6:1-4 and Jude. The Nephilim are also mentioned in Numbers 13:33, but it is likely that by this time in Israel's history, Nephilim was used as a term for a tall, intimidating peoples. It's plausible that the Nephilim were both half angels and half giants, making them absolutely huge and absolutely super strong. The Nephilim were the children of the sons of gods and daughters of men, and Christian scholars have theorized that the sons of gods were actually these demonic fallen angels who reproduced with women. Being the offspring of partial angelic heredity, the Nephilim were considered mighty men who are of old the men of renown. The ancients. These people were huge, claiming that they were like 5 times the size of an average man. In the Hebrew Bible, a group of mysterious beings or people of unusually large size and length who lived both before and after the flood were called Nephilimus, sometimes translated to giants. Even the fallen ones, from the Hebrew nephil, meaning to fall. Seems like these people were writing about similar stuff, huh? Spooky. Number 4, 200 million horsemen. This next one is not really a creature as much as it's the end of a lot of all of us. All this Armageddon stuff they were saying, that's some pretty strange stuff that's on its way. Book of Revelation stuff, you know? Quote, I saw as God wanted to show me the horses and the men on them. The men had pieces of iron on their chests. These were red like fire and blue like the sky and yellow like sulfur. The heads of the horses looked like the heads of lions. Fire and smoke and sulfur came out of their mouths. 1/3 part of all man was killed by the fire and smoke and sulfur that came out of their mouths. Word for word. Horsemen or ancient biblical technology? This sounds horrifying. Also, 200 million? That's a lot of flying flaming horses just trucking around the skies and sands like giant tanks, firing fire fire out of their mouths and nose. As I looked, behold, a stormy wind came out of the north, and a great cloud with brightness around it, and fire flashing forth continually, and in the midst of the fire, as it were gleaming metal. And from the midst of all this came likeness of 4 living creatures, and this was their appearance. They had a human likeness. Okay. You put a Baja hoodie on me at a Dave Matthews concert and hear me saying all that stuff, you probably just think I'm some sci-fi stoner. Nope. This is riveting material, folks. I need to read this thing front to back. Apparently this force was supposed to have taken out, or is going to take out, a third of the entire world's population. I know like 3 things that can do that. Pandemics, missiles, and floods. However, if men and horses showed up with lion heads breathing fire, it's safe to say it's game over. Number 3, the Leviathan. Okay, at first I was like, oh, that's a roller coaster at Canada's Wonderland. No, this vicious monster was actually modeled after this vicious monster. The Leviathan, the second of the great monsters described in the book of Job. This Leviathan, is an absolute massive sea monster who's impervious to human weapons, breathes fire, and emits smoke from his nostrils. So this is a Zelda boss for sure. The Leviathan is probably related to another ancient monster called Loten, a 7-headed giant serpent who represents primeval chaos, as with pretty much every other biblical creature does. Hey, these things aren't meant to be cute and fuzzy. There's some less exciting theories that insist the Leviathan is just a dramatic interpretation of a crocodile or anaconda or maybe a plesiosaur, resembling something like the Loch Ness Monster. But that doesn't explain the breathing fire thing, or the size. Was this giant sea snake a water dragon? Because apparently it's like 300 miles long. Yeah, terrifying. Scary thing now is many different religions and cultures have their own version of the Leviathan. Tiamat, Hydra, Jormungandr. Maybe this thing was just hunted into extinction. I don't know. What do you think? Number 2, Archangel Michael. It is said that the angels are not humans, but creatures made from God's creation. I've also seen what the Bible describes angels looking like, and it's not handsome people with wings. Apparently a lot of these things, people really couldn't even describe what they were seeing in front of them. But we'll get to what these things look like in a minute. Of those creatures, Satan, aka Lucifer, is one. The one. However, here is even one creature that Satan fears more than any creature, and that's fellow Archangel Michael. Or Saint Michael. Some say they're brothers, some say they were on the same team for a bit. This is some good stuff, people. Quote, now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth, and his angels were thrown down with him. Revelation 12:7-9. Okay, so hold on. He and them are all down here with us? That's terrifying. Apparently Michael led that army that won, so whatever scares Satan scares the hell out of me as well. Also, all these pictures and statues of him and like window panes are all of him like wielding a giant sword made of light, just stepping on Satan's back as a hero. That's pretty intimidating, not gonna lie. And coming in at the number 1 spot, Ophanim. Okay, so what angels actually looked like apparently was like giant geometrical feathers with eyes and a consciousness. Some had horns, some had hooves, lots of golden metal colors. This next thing doesn't even make sense to my brain. I feel like this is an anthill trying to understand an iPhone. Quote, as I looked at the living creatures, I saw a wheel on the ground beside each creature with its 4 faces. This was the appearance and structure of the wheels. They sparked like topaz, and all 4 looked alike. Each appeared to be made like a wheel, intersecting a wheel. As they moved, they would go in any one of the 4 directions the creatures were faced. The wheels did not change direction as the creatures went. Their rims were high and awesome, and all 4 rims were full of eyes all around. Ezekiel 1:15-18. First off, is this thing even a creature? Yeah, everything I see here is an alien. Is this just us trying to process some sort of like energy being with eyes? Because if I saw Lucifer that looks like the hunk on the Netflix show, and then I saw this thing? One of the Dead Sea Scrolls interprets them as angels. Late sections of the Book of Enoch interprets them as class of celestial beings who don't sleep and guard the throne of God. Whatever this thing or things are, it sounds and looks absolutely horrifying. How could you paint that on a ceiling? I would just give up and paint wings and a halo as well. For real though, like, That is a spaceship of some sort, isn't it? I mean, I understand the times, maybe the science wasn't there, but this thing is straight out of a sci-fi novel.
In at number 5, Nadab and Abihu burned alive. Nadab and Abihu were brothers chosen to serve the Lord as priests due to their family having a rich pedigree. Their intensive preparation and dedication to serving God. However, when they chose to make an offering to the Lord, they did not know it would be their last. They dressed in their best robes and made their way to the altar to make an offering of incense. It was a known fact that they were forbidden to make unauthorized offerings to the Lord, and it is unknown why they ignored this warning. Once their offering was made, a flame engulfed the altar and the brothers onlookers watched as they were burned alive. It is said that these deaths were to show the people that there are no sins too small. The brothers should have known that the incense was an unauthorized gift. Something to keep in mind next time you light some incense in your home. Which I never do, so I'm fine. No one's burning me alive, motherfuckers. Coming in at number 4, John the Baptist is beheaded. Now this one starts with some Kardashian style family drama. John the Baptist had been imprisoned by Herod the Tetrarch for commenting that it was not right that Herod had divorced his wife Vasilis, so that he may take his brother's wife Herodias instead. John commented that it is not lawful for you to have her, which seems like a nice way of putting it. Herod has John imprisoned and was planning on keeping him there. The people saw John as a prophet and Herod didn't want to cause any upset. For his birthday he had a gathering where Herodias' daughters danced for all of the guests. This pleased him and his guests so much he made an oath to grant her anything she wanted. Prompted by her mother, she asked, "Bring me John the Baptist's head on a platter." Herod was disturbed by this, but he had to keep his oath. That evening John the Baptist was beheaded in his cell. His head then brought on a platter to be presented to Herodias and her daughter in front of all of their guests. It is unclear what happened to the head after this, but that is some crazy revenge for gossiping about the family. That's why you should never gossip. Someone might cut out your tongue. In at number 3 we have King Herod eaten alive. Here is another example of someone upsetting God and paying the ultimate price. King Herod, a different Herod from the last story, was giving a speech to his people as he usually does. On this day, however, while he was speaking, someone cried out, "The voice of God and not of a mortal." He did not refute the claim that he was a god, and it is said that he was instantly struck down by an angel. Angels are savage. We've learnt this on this channel. They're evil. The story goes on that he did not have a quick death. He was in agonizing pain for at least 7 days. It's like it took God 7 days to build the world. Wow. 7's a good number. Like David Beckham. He was number 7. Not that I believe in God, you know. I don't believe in anything. During this time it is said he was being eaten alive by worms from the inside out. The worms consumed him after 7 days, and this was his slow, painful cause of death. Imagine a worm consuming you. Worms are evil because you can cut them in half and then they are 2 worms. That's you just created 2 different things. 2 worms. When 2 become 1. When 1 becomes 2. Like what the that shouldn't be right. Like you should never be able to cut something in half and then it becomes 2 living things. Anyway, that's and it's worse than The Conjuring. In at number 2 we have Concubine of a Levite. This story is about a Levite who was traveling with his concubine, a second-class wife. Sucks. Imagine being the second-class wife. I only want to be first class. Along his travels, he finds an elderly man who offers to give them shelter for the night in the town of Gibeah. It is a dangerous place no one should be traveling through. Some dangerous men show up at the house looking to have a good time. The Levite and old man decide to offer up the concubine to appease the men, hoping this will keep them safe from the men. The concubine is taken away by the men for the rest of the night. In the morning, the Levite finds the concubine dead outside of where he had been staying. The man is angry for what they've done to her, so he decides to get revenge on the men, so he dices them up. He then sends those pieces to 12 tribes surrounding Gibeah, which leads them to attack the city. Dicing your girlfriend up to get revenge on her murderers doesn't seem like the best idea, but then again he did offer her up to them in the first place. So you're in the wrong. You should be in The Conjuring, and I'll possess you. And finally, in at number 1 we have Ezekiel's Army of the Dead. This next one might remind you more of The Walking Dead than a Bible story. Ezekiel was brought by God to a valley that was full of bones. He walked back and forth among the bones until God asked him if these bones could once again live. God then told him to repeat a prophecy to the bones as he told him it. The bones started to move from around him. They began to form and find the other pieces of the body they had lost. Tendons and flesh appeared on them and skin covered them, but they were not breathing, they were not alive. alive. He then told him the final words to speak, and the dead began to wake up and breathe once more. God told him that these are the people of Israel who had been killed. He was bringing them back to take their rightful place back in their land. Ezekiel then had a full undead army to take back their land which they had lost.
Coming in at number 5, we've got the cherubim. A mainstay in the home decor of grandmothers and churchgoers everywhere, folks tend to love cherubs. They've got chubby little cheeks, lovely little wings, and a whole lot of resemblance to babies. Unlike babies though, cherubs tend not to scream and cry and crap everywhere, which might actually be part of their appeal. But these angels are not as they seem. Sure, they gained quite a bit of popularity in art that depicts them as lovable little lads and lasses, but that's not really what they're supposed to look like. A lot less people would want to hang them in their homes if they actually resembled the way they're described in some texts. So their quasi-human form is about the only part they got right. Otherwise, cherubim are jam-packed with terrible features that would probably give kids nightmares. First off, they don't have just one face, they have 4. One of a human, one of a lion, one of an ox, and one of an eagle. That's a lot of freaky faces. Add in 4 wings and you've got a wild and crazy creature. But the basic appearance of these things is just the beginning. Those who behold the cherub might notice that it always appears as if it's on fire, you know, for reasons. And apparently they were often accompanied by another indecipherable being. A half machine, half creature full of whirling crystalline forms, these interlocking wheels stared down upon folks with hundreds of eyes that covered their entire bodies. Imagine that, being visited by an angel, and instead of seeing a calming, serene humanoid dressed in white, you're greeted by some awful chimeric abomination and its pet crystalline wheel. Insanity. No wonder folks who claim to have seen angels went nuts. Although I think it would be pretty wicked if grandmas started putting art up of these cherubs in their bathrooms. Coming at number 4, Seraphim. Keeping with the theme of Ims for a second, now we've got another order of angels that are a whole lot freakier than we often give them credit for. Seraphim are flying serpents. What else do I need to say, honestly? I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that folks don't often associate flying snakes with angels, but here we are. These winged, wiggly forces are meant to hover above God's throne, singing about how excellent and divine and fantastic he is, which is all well and good, but just think about that for a second. Why would God, the Almighty, the creator of everything and all that is good, need a bunch of snakes to fly around literally singing his praises? It seems like they're doing their best to convince anybody who might hear of it. Who else needs a PR team running around making sure that everyone believes they're actually really good? In addition to their sketchy job descriptions, they're just plain weird looking. They fly around with 6 wings sprouting from their backs, 2 for their actual airborne maneuvers and 4 to cover their faces. Oh, and also their feet. Yes, these flying, praise-ridden snakes also have feet. So are they dragons, or do they just have like little feet dangling out by their tails? Unless you personally plan on meeting some angels, we may never know for sure, but that image is not a good one. In some writings on celestial hierarchy, the seraphim are described as such. The name seraphim clearly indicates their ceaseless and eternal revolution about divine principles, their heat and keenness, the exuberance of their intense, perpetual, tireless activity, and their elevative and energetic assimilation of those below, kindling them and firing them to their own heat, and wholly purifying them by a burning and all-consuming flame, and by the unhidden, unquenchable, changeless, radiant, and enlightening power, dispelling and destroying the shadows of darkness. So if you've ever found yourself influenced by the shadows of darkness, good luck. You know, demons tend to do their best to influence good people to do bad things, but they can, usually be resisted. Angels seem to just want to destroy anything that goes against their vision of holiness. Food for thought. Coming in number 3, we've got the Watchers. First of all, any organization known as the Watchers is gonna be creepy. That's just creepy names 101. Second, you know Noah's Ark? The story of God telling his chosen dude that he's gonna flood the whole world in order to hard reset all the sin that's accumulated? Well, the Watchers can essentially be blamed for all that sin. This group of angels managed to fly under God's radar for a while and made their way down to Earth. See, the Watchers saw some of the beautiful women on Earth and found themselves unable to really focus on anything else. Wanting to marry these mortals, the Watchers rebelled against the rest of heaven and went down to Earth to have a good time. While there, they lived hedonistic, overly sexual lives and taught humans secret knowledge too. It's said that the Watchers were the first to teach people about weapons, which obviously ended up in brutal violence. Also, the kids they had with human mothers turned out to be a little, abnormal. You might be conjuring up images of Greek demigods right now, but that's not the case with Christianity. Instead, these human-angel hybrids turned into 1,000-foot tall abominations and started killing and eating people. They also forced humans into slavery in order to produce more food, which, good stuff. Way to go, Watchers. Very responsible. Teaching these lower beings about weapons and makeup and then breeding them to make ungodly abominations. In the end though, God did take revenge and lock these angels away, but damn. Not even the devil could come up with a plot to so thoroughly everything up. Coming at number 2, we've got Belial. If you're a fan of this channel, you've probably heard this name before. However, we don't usually talk about Belial in a biblical context. Now, we're talking about Basket Case, a classic. However, the surgically removed basket-dwelling monster got his name from this horrific angel. Fitting, especially when you realize what the original Belial got up to. Created right after Lucifer, he was one of the first angels to revolt against God, and that's just the start too. Belial led an army against Michael, resulting in untold amounts of carnage. Each army took 3 wins, and only during the 7th battle did God intervene because he wanted to make sure that Belial lost. For an angel to revolt against the others and then do unspeakable things against the others during battle, that takes a lot of power. And lots of terrifying evil too. Man, even the strongest from hell were once angels, eh? And coming in at number 1, we've got Raphael. To round it all out, let's discuss how even the holiest of forces are capable of the absolute cruelest of acts. Like, unimaginable torture that lasts lifetimes. I guess we already knew all that thanks to Dante's Inferno, but let's take a look at a very specific, pointed act of malice for a second. Raphael. Although he's not one of the named angels in the New Testament, he has become associated with healing and stirring the pool of Bethesda. However, just because he's associated with healing doesn't mean he can't bring the pain. Known for fighting the demon Azazel, he eventually triumphed over this force of evil. So what'd he do when he won? Did he banish the demon, purify its soul? Nope. He bound their hands and feet together, found a big hole in the desert full of rocks, and then cast the demon into this pit. Apparently, that demon waits there until the day of judgment, when he will then subsequently be cast into a pit of fire. Holy smokes, that is a hardcore punishment. I guess the demon deserved it in some way, but geez Louise, that's just gotta suck. I'm not sure if folks should find it comforting or not that these supposedly holy beings are so absolutely terrifying. Like, if you ever saw one with your own 2 eyes, it might have a Lovecraftian madness-inducing effect on you. Seriously, angels are scary.
Number 5 on this list is the demon spirit of Hans Trapp. Back in the 1400s in France, there lived a very powerful and rich man named Hans Trapp. Hans was extremely well off and had quite a lot of influence in the region he was living in. This wasn't enough for him though, he wanted more. Described by others as being extremely greedy and merciless, Trapp started engaging in some very questionable methods to grow his fortune. In fact, it's reported that Trapp went so far as to make some deals with the devil. Once this reached the ears of the church, they very swiftly excommunicated Hans Trapp and sent him away from their lands, confiscating all of his property and wealth along with it. Embarrassed and stripped of all of his power, Hans was furious at the church. He made his way into the mountains, where he built an extremely makeshift home out of the materials that he had available to him. It was in this self-made den that he stewed and brooded. His anger and frustration cooked, and it bubbled to a point where Hans Trapp could be described as being completely evil. Right around this period of time as well is when his mind started to go, or at least that's what people assume, because what he does next is not something that any sane person would do. Hans Trapp gathers up straw from around his home and makes himself into a scarecrow. Then on Christmas, he waited on an abandoned road for travelers to stumble upon him. Sadly, it was a 10-year-old boy who walked past him first. Hans Trapp stabbed the boy to death and then took his body and dragged it back to his home. It was there that he cut up the body and turned it into a meal as a way of praising Satan. It's said that before he could eat it though, God struck Hans Trapp with a bolt of lightning for being so abhorrently evil and sent him straight to hell. Good riddance, God. However, now on Christmas, the demonic spirit of Hans Trapp breaks out of hell and will hunt for children who haven't been good. If a child has been bad, then he will find them as his scarecrow self. Basically, he will be summoned, but he will only be summoned to you if you've been bad this past year. So be good, and you should be safe. Number 4 on this list is the Karakonkalos. Now this creature is known to some to be the Christmas Bigfoot and lives in Turkey. It only appears during the Christmas holidays and there is actually nothing that you can do to stop it. That's right, you actually have no ability to summon or unsummon this beast. However, you do have a say in whether or not it chooses to kill you. If you happen to be walking on the streets of Turkey during the Christmas holidays, then there is the potential for you to run into this creature. Now it's important to not freak out, however that's easier said than done because this demon is pretty scary. It is a very large hairy creature that reminds a lot of people of Bigfoot, but with potentially a little bit more ogre-esque qualities to it. Even though this creature may appear as just a brute on the surface, it's actually very intelligent, and if you run into it, it will want to ask you a riddle. Now you have to answer this riddle. If you walk away, the demon will most likely take serious offense and make you pay with your life. The riddle itself is very dangerous too though, because your answer must include the word black. If it does not include this word, then you will be killed right where you stand. You also need to make sure that you get the answer to the actual riddle correct, because a wrong answer could cost you your life as well. Sadly, this creature is difficult to avoid. Sometimes it takes a more tactful approach in getting your attention, waiting outside your home and mimicking the voice of someone you know until you come out and you have to play with it. One way it will occasionally kill you as well is by immediately paralyzing your body in a trance. It's said that it has the capability and that it will put you into a deep trance and leave you outside so that you will just freeze to death. The entire time though during this trance, your brain is cognizant as well, and you will have to be conscious as you slowly die. Maybe just avoid trips to Turkey during Christmas time, folks. Number 3 on this list is the GRITHER. Now this is a demon that had its origins actually come from a television series called Tales from the Dark Side. This was a horror television show in the mid-80s that gained a decent following. The GRITHER is said to be a demon that lives very close to Santa Claus. Separated from Santa's workshop by a mountain, the GRITHER lives alone in an abandoned ship. This ship would have been an old exploratory ship used by sailors several decades ago when they were searching the Arctic. They clearly lost their sense of direction though, and all eventually died from starvation or the cold. The GRITHER now calls this boat its home, which is slightly strange because it actually hates getting wet. Its appearance is pretty disgusting. It has long slimy arms with massive demon-like hands and huge veins just pumping what looks to be this bluish sludge through its body. It's described in the show as being the most dangerous creature in the world. Lucky for us, this dangerous creature lives in the deep Arctic, however there is a way for you to summon it. Even more than getting wet, the GRITHER hates its name most of all. Apparently, every time you say its name, its ears will grow. This continues until they're big enough to act as wings, and the GRITHER will fly out from the Arctic and come after the person who's been saying its name. Now this is not something that you want to do though, because it won't be too pleased when it finds you, and taking this thing on in a fight probably will not end well. Now nobody has any idea how many times you have to say this thing's name before its ears grow large enough to come after you, but I think in this segment I probably said it like 5 or 6 times now, so probably a good time to transition, guys. Number 2 on this list is Frau Perchta. Frau Perchta is a Christmas time demon witch creature in southern Germany and Austria. She has an iron nose that is in the shape of a beak. Her clothes are all beaten up old rags, and she carries around a cane. That's not the only thing that she carries around though, because she also has a very sharp knife hiding beneath those grotesque rags that she wears. Frau Perchta is especially dangerous to the individual of the house who does the spinning. Now when I say spinning, I'm not referring to like a bicycle spinning, I'm referring to the action of weaving clothes. Yeah, this is an ancient legend, and it's said that this demon, Frau Perchta, is very specific about how she wants this spinning done. If you haven't completed your spinning by the correct date, which many people believe to be January 6th when the Christmas season finishes, then she will come for you. Now the severity of what she does will be determined by you and how much you have or have not accomplished. If all of your spinning is done, then you're safe and your home won't warrant a visit. If only half of it is done though, then you can expect the things that you haven't already spun to be lit on fire, which could then in turn cause your entire house to burn down. Now that's pretty bad, but listen to this. If you haven't spun everything that you need to, and when she gets to your house is a mess, dishes aren't done, floor isn't vacuumed, whatever it may be, well that's when she gets the knife. The legend says that if Frau Perchta isn't satisfied with the state of your home, then she will come into your room while you are asleep and disembowel you with her knife. She will take all of your innards, throw them around your room, and fill your dead body back up with rocks and sticks. I mean, not that the rocks and sticks matter to you at this point, your whole freaking organs are all over the floor, but it's still pretty bad. Either way, if you're living in Germany or Austria, I highly recommend bringing out the Swiffer and getting to work, because if you don't, you may just summon Frau Perchta. Number 1 on this list is the STRAGGELE. Now this is a kind of add-on to the last entry of Frau Perchta, but also different in its own right. Frau Perchta, when she's flying around the region checking the homes for their cleanliness and spinning, will often be accompanied by a group of demonic assistants. If Santa has his kind-looking elves, then this is Frau Perchta's version of that, but really evil. These demons look like devilish wildebeests. They have long hair all over their bodies, run on 2 legs, long sharp horns coming from the crown of their head. Their faces are big and red and accentuate their large teeth that they have. These creatures aren't as concerned with the cleanliness of your home though. They have their own evil mission to uphold during Christmas time. It is said that as these demons traverse the region with Frau Perchta, they are looking for children who were bad. Now everyone's heard the story about Santa Claus bringing you coal if you were bad this year instead of presents, but these beasts bring something far worse: death. If they stumble upon a home that has a bad child in it, which they're capable of sensing, then they will go into that home and tear the child from their family. They will then proceed to brutally rip apart the body of this as a form of punishment for being bad this year. It is said that some parents can try and stop this from happening by leaving a meal on the front step. If these demons are satisfied with this meal, then they may leave that child alone for this year, but if they aren't, then they will break into the home and complete their mission. Similar to Frau Perchta, these demons can be avoided though. It's up to you as a child to be good all year, not only so Santa can bring you presents, but so these demonic beasts of the night don't come into your home and feast on your flesh. That's kind of the main reason, I would say.